Good afternoon. Good afternoon. This is the Space Coast Transportation Planning Organization Governing Board Meeting Agenda Notice. This fine Thursday, May 10th, 2018, 3 o'clock. So let's do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Item number 3 is public comments. We do have the sign-up sheets in the back if you wish to comment on any of our agenda items. And before I go on to item 4, we do want to move the action item 7B, that's the audit report, up to in front of 5A. That's what we will do. Okay, so let's go to item 4, the TPO Board and Committee Recognition Awards. Kim Smith, welcome.
Good afternoon, everybody. And those of you that know me know this is my favorite TPO meeting of the year because we get to recognize those folks that have really gone above and beyond in bike ped initiatives, and we've got an exceptional group today, so we'll go ahead and get started. First award is the Get on a Trail. Oh, I'm sorry. This is Edie McCall, and she's going to actually hand out our beautiful awards and shake hands while I read award winners. And she is our chairperson of our Bicycle Pedestrian Trails Advisory Committee. So the first award is the Get on a Trail Award, and we have 2 different recipients this year: the City of Titusville and Brian Vale. So if I could invite Scott Larice, Edie's already here, Brian Vale to come up. And while they're coming up, just going to read to you a little bit about what these groups did. As far as the City of Titusville, as the space shuttle program ended and the uncertainty of space flight into the future loomed overhead, the City of Titusville realized that it would have to redefine its identity to keep it vibrant and relevant. Already hosting a globally recognized birding festival and blessed with natural beauty such as the Merritt Island National Refuge and Canaveral National Seashore, this made it easy for them to promote Titusville as a premier location for outdoor enthusiasts. So they went to work on becoming a trail town. They built a piece of the rail trail, which will become a piece of the coast-to-coast trail. The City of Titusville worked to complete a section of the rail trail and further promote connectivity. The city installed a cycle track in the heart of downtown to provide bicyclists with their own facility. We applaud the work of the City of Titusville and look forward to your future plans. So.
All right.
Okay. And Mr. Vale, don't you go anywhere. Mr. Vale is a longtime citizen of the town of Malabar, has a reputation for driving positive changes in his town. He has served his town as a council member and is currently a volunteer firefighter. In 2016, Mr. Vale played a key role in both the design and construction of the Cameron Trail Shelter in Malabar's Richard E. Cameron and Volunteers Preserve. At his own expense, Mr. Vale contributed personal funds, equipment, and labor to ensure success of the project. He led the charge as the project foreman, volunteering several days of hard work, expertise, and guidance. The shelter exceeded expectations, and it provides trail users with shelter from weather conditions and serves as an elevated observation platform overlooking a wetland. Mr. Vale deserves this recognition and his large contribution in making the project a success. Our next award is the Encouragement Award, and we're going to invite Marcia Gadke and Nicole Hall up of the Titusville Chamber of Commerce. These two ladies, they just said, we haven't seen you much lately, but we saw them the first part of the year quite a bit because they were busy. In conjunction with the city, Ms. Gadke and Ms. Hall have worked tirelessly to make Titusville's dream of becoming a trail town a reality. The Titusville Chamber of Commerce has many wonderful resources to help visitors plan their cycling activities while in town. Their Welcome Center, located downtown, opened in 2016 and is a beautiful joint facility shared with the Coast to Coast Bicycle Company. The center provides visitors with extensive knowledge about trail opportunities in North Brevard. You can find poster-sized trail maps and various brochures of local activities. The Chamber also uses social media outlets to promote Titusville activities and events. Most recently, the Chamber organized the Rail Trail ribbon-cutting ceremony for the Brevard portion of the trail and hosted an accompanying community cycle fun day for citizens to enjoy group rides of the new groundbreaking trail. In addition to the support of the rail trail, the Chamber also recently served as a co-host to Bike Florida, a tour ride of 600 cyclists that spent 3 days in Titusville. We appreciate Ms. Gadke and Ms. Hall's dedication to their trail town and to Brevard. All right, our next award is for community partner, and there's just, this person has been dynamic. Ms. Carrie Lebeski, will you please come on? Ms. Lebeski is the life safety specialist with the Titusville Titusville Fire Department. Ms. Lebeski is a fairly new addition to the Titusville Fire Department, but being new hasn't slowed her community engagement efforts. Since TPO staff first worked with Ms. Lebeski last year, she has been extremely engaged in promoting bicycle safety. She has completed a course in helmet fit and attended the course to become a certified trainer to teach the bicycle pedestrian curriculum. Not only has she worked with TPO staff on several community outreach events, but she's also conducted many other outreach events covering bicycle safety and helmet use. Ms. Lebeski is an asset to the TPO, Brevard County, and we applaud her for her dedication and her work. Thank you. All right. Our next award is for enforcement. And here's another bunch of guys, and I think we have the whole Melbourne Police Department traffic unit here. Guys, come on up here so everybody can get a look at this hard-working bunch of guys. So when the TPO set out on its law enforcement tour in July of 2017, one of our main goals was to partner with law enforcement agencies in efforts and initiatives to lower the number of bicycle pedestrian injuries and fatalities. The response from Melbourne Police Department's traffic unit to the initial collaborative dialogue was outstanding. Since last summer, Melbourne's traffic officers, these guys, have distributed bicycle pedestrian law tip cards at various locations, including underserved populations, and they have conducted enforcement waves at high crash intersections. They have issued citations to motorists, bicyclists, and pedestrians that did not follow the law. In the fall of 2017, Melbourne PD rolled out Operation Street Smart with the goal of reducing pedestrian and bicycle fatalities and severe injury crashes. At the end of the 3-month campaign, these traffic officers had issued 620 citations and educated countless citizens. Most recently, the department launched Operation Busted, a traffic enforcement effort which targeted motorists that ran school bus stop arms. The campaign started with an education wave where they distributed a piece of literature to everybody that came in at arrival and dismissal to the school, which I thought was a rather large task in itself. And then after that, they went out and did an enforcement wave where they issued 176 tickets and 23 warnings in a very short period of time. So we recognize you and commend you for your efforts. I'd also like to mention Cheryl Trainer and Dan Dorsimer, who weren't able to be here today, but they were the supervisors of the unit. So thank you all for everything you've done.
All right.
Our next award is for education and somebody that is extremely a big part of how I've been successful and somebody that I've worked very closely with and does a tremendous job. Julia Barnhouse, will you come up? Julia Barnhouse is the PE teacher at Roy Allen Elementary, and when I was looking over awards this year, I could not believe that this one had just kind of slipped my mind over the years, and we had never given her an award for her efforts. But she's been a longtime champion of the bicycle pedestrian safety and education. She is certified to teach the state curriculum for bicycle pedestrian safety and routinely teaches her students during her PE classes. Likewise, she has also taught the curriculum during summer camp programs. In addition to her educational initiatives, Ms. Barnhouse also participates in bike and walk to school day events and works diligently to ensure her students have helmets when they bike to school. Most of all, during school registration, she checks that incoming students who are bike riders are supplied with a helmet through the TPO helmet program, if they need one. We applaud her continuous efforts for keeping children safe. All right. So, engineering. Sarah Van Gundy, will you please come up? Ms. Van Gundy was the FDOT project manager for the State Road A1A resurfacing for Atlantic and Orlando Avenue through the one-way pairs in Cocoa Beach. The original project was a milling and resurfacing, included buffered bicycle lanes and various safety upgrades, but fell short of having enough funding to fill in sidewalk throughout the project on both sides. Through discussions with Commissioner Barfield and understanding that the nature of heavy pedestrian traffic and lack of a safe access to the beach, Ms. Van Gundy secured the additional funding from FDOT Central Office to design and construct the sidewalks within the project. We appreciate her dedication and proactive approach as a project manager. It is everyone's goal to make walking and biking safer for our residents and tourists. We salute your efforts. All right. So we're on our last award, and this award is one that used to be called Lifetime Achievement. You know, at the last meeting, we changed the name of this award to the Robert S. Comm Award of Excellence. And there was just absolutely no dispute that the recipient of this award was well-deserved. I told him right before the meeting, just like I was told last year, it doesn't mean you can quit. But we did want to recognize him. Murray Hahn. Mr. Hahn has served as the BPAC chairperson for more than 10 years. In his free time, his passion is to be deep down a trail, exploring nature and encountering wildlife in person. Mr. Hahn enjoys mountain biking and hiking. He has worked endless hours to improve trails and pathways in Brevard County. Mr. Hahn is just as comfortable wielding his chainsaw to clear fallen trees as he is equally content creating PowerPoint presentations to educate others on trails and greenway initiatives. Whatever the cause, whether it's the SCTPO BPAC, Trail Partners, Brevard Mountain Bike Association, the Environmentally Endangered Land Program, Malabar Trails and Greenways, and other organizations, Mr. Hahn gives it all. The amount of volunteer hours he has given to enhancing bicycle initiatives in Brevard County will be hard to top. It is for these reasons, and many not mentioned, that he is being recognized with the Robert Comm Award of Excellence.
All right.
And I do want to say that with Murray getting the award today, he becomes the second half of the first husband and wife to receive the award. His wife, Sue, received this same award in 2012. So we need to keep those two here in Brevard County.
Yes, that's right.
So just to end the TPO's recognition program presentations, we just wanted to let everyone know that, you know, the program has been established to properly recognize our committee members and our board members for perfect attendance within a year, and also to give them a service award for members that serve 4 consecutive years with 85% confirmed attendance. So I would like to read the names just to acknowledge some of our committee members and, you know, recognize them for the service to our community. For the Technical Advisory Committee, Aaron Stirk, Brevard County Planning and Development, Cliff Graham, Orlando Melbourne Airport Authority, Jim Liesenfeld, Space Coast Area Transit, Devin Swanson, Brevard County Public Works, Ed Weigriff, City of Cocoa, Jenny Lamb, City of Melbourne, Michael Jeruzovitz, City of Rockledge, Scott Morgan, City of West Melbourne. For the appointed CAC members, Daniel Spradling, City of Melbourne, James Boothroyd, City of Palm Bay, Philip Weinberg, City of Palm Bay, Sandra Mickelson, City of West Melbourne, Rodney Honeycutt, Brevard County District 1. And then for the BPAC members, Todd Corwin, City of Melbourne staff, Dan Gallagher, Rockledge, Murray Hahn, Malabar, and Janet Metz, Grant Bulgaria. So we thank our committee members. The committees are really the voice of the community, and they guide the transportation planning process. So there's a whole lot of public involvement that goes in with those committees. So we do need approval of resolutions 18-23 through 18-34 for the TPO service awards.
All right, thank you, Georgia.
Second.
All right, I have a motion by Commissioner Allender, second by, it was close,
Yeah, right.
by Commissioner Barfield. Discussion? Seeing none, those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? And I vote aye, and the motion passes.
All right, and then finally, we have 3 members of our TPO governing board that we want to recognize for perfect attendance in 2017. And so when I call your name, if you'd come up and receive your certificate, Mr. Jerry Allender with the Canaveral Port Authority.
All right. Yeah.
Mr. Don Beauvais, City of Cocoa, and I don't believe Don is here today,
I
so
didn't
we will
see
make
him.
sure he gets his certificate. And then Mr. Stuart Glass, South Beaches Coalition.
I did see him.
All right. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. This is exciting. I enjoy that. Item 5 will move up the audit, and that will be presented by Zach Schellenfor. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Zach Schellenfor, partner with James Moore and Company CPAs. First and foremost, thank you for the flexibility. Had a bit of a tight schedule, so this helps me out tremendously. Tough act to follow, though. All of the awards, everybody's doing very well. However, I guess this is kind of the award to the TPO staff and the finance performance and just tracking of the organization. As you'll see, the results are very positive for the year. So we'll kind of take that angle with this. So first and foremost, thank you to the board for the opportunity to work with the TPO. This is our second year serving as your external auditors. And a big thank you to staff as well, especially Carol Holden for all of their hard work in ensuring really a very smooth audit process. There was a handout that was passed out prior to the meeting. In addition to the financial statements in the agenda packet, there was just a little one sheet. We did this last year, really just to kind of hit all of the highlights over the what the audit is, rather than going kind of page by page through the 50 or 60 pages that comprise that entire document. So a few required communications just to kind of go through what we must report to you all as the governing board. So our responsibility in performing the audit, a financial audit does not involve looking at every single transaction, but it's really a top-down approach where we drill into either significant or risky areas in looking at your activity and the financial statements. Much of this for you all, of course, is grant and compliance related, where there's very extensive testing that we perform on your expenses to ensure that you are in compliance with your grant agreements. Significant estimates and disclosures in the financial statements. Really 2 items here. They're primarily just financial reporting matters. They do not impact you from a budgetary standpoint or anything of that nature. But in the statements you will see there's what's called an OPEB liability and a net pension liability. And these just relate to the fact that your employees participate in the Florida retirement system and the Brevard County health insurance plan. there are additional disclosures required related to liabilities calculated for reporting purposes, but again, this does not impact you from a budgetary standpoint. If we had any audit adjustments, we would report those to you as well. There were no adjustments from the numbers that we were given to the numbers that made it to this report. So generally speaking, any internal reports as of 9/30/2017, those should be very comparable to what you see here, maybe just some classification differences. And then if we had any difficulties performing the audit, disagreements with management, anything of that nature, we would have to report that to you as well. I always like to say that if there were such issues, you would have heard from us before now. So that is good news. Audit reports, we do issue 5 reports that are part of the full set of the financial statements. The first is the audit report on the financial statements themselves, and here we did issue the TPO an unmodified opinion, which says that your financial statements are fairly presented in all material respects, and this is the best opinion that we can issue in performing an audit of your financial statements. The second report that we issue is on internal control and compliance. We're required to perform the audit in accordance with government auditing standards, where if we have any deficiencies in internal control that come to our attention or any significant compliance matters, we would report those to you in this letter. We had no such findings that rose to the level of being reported in this letter, so for all intents and purposes, this is another clean report. There were no material weaknesses in internal control identified in performing the audit. The third report is on compliance for your federal grant activity. Very much like I said on the prior report, we look at your internal control related to grants specifically and then compliance with those grant programs. We had no findings to report related to that grant activity as well. The fourth report, the Florida Auditor General requires us to look at a series of items related to the TPO's financial condition and a few other specific matters that we have to look at, and if there are any exceptions that we identified, those would get reported here. There were no exceptions in that report, so really another clean report, no modifications from the standard verbiage that the AG requires us to opine on. And then lastly, the state requires us to look at your compliance with state statutes over investments and investment policies. We did in this report say that the TPO was in compliance with those specified statutes. So all of the reports really, no exceptions, no findings per se that we had. Staff did a great job. This really is what you would want to see, the best report that could be issued from an audit report and findings standpoint. A couple highlights on the financial side. It's very straightforward, as for the most part, it's money in, money out related to that grant activity, usually with a little bit of a residual in your general fund. At the end of the year, you're about a $15,000 balance in your general fund, so very similar to the prior year. And looking at the numbers, though, your total fund balance, when you look at your governmental funds, is about a negative $215,000. So just to kind of put it out there so nobody sees that and there's any concern, there is a separate line item for what's called deferred inflows, and that basically is if money is not received within 60 days of year end for reporting purposes, that gets classified as a deferred inflow where it's not hitting your ending fund balance. So it makes it look like there's this deficit. However, that money was received after year end. There, I just know, was some paperwork with the state where that money did not quite come in within that time frame. So that's why that looks a little bit weird and different from prior years, but still a very break-even, slight addition for the year, as is expected and as has been seen in prior years. That generally covers all that I have. If there's any questions, I'm more than glad to answer them, and thanks again for your time and for the flexibility.
Thank you for your report. Any questions?
Not a question, but if
Okay.
there aren't any, I'd like to move to approve it if it gets to that point.
Okay. I have a motion for approval.
Second?
And a second by Commissioner Isnardi. Discussion? Seeing none, those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, and I vote aye, and the motion passes. Thank you very much for reporting that.
Thank you.
Zach is now a partner of James Moore. Right, Zach?
Yes.
Oh, okay. All right. Thank
That's
you.
important.
Very. All right, let's go back to item 5A, the Technical Advisory Committee. That's the TAC, Citizens Advisory Committee, CAC report. Georgiana.
Yes, the Technical and Citizen Advisory Committee met on Monday, and you have before you a summary of the recommendations on the handout at your place. The TAC-CAC recommended to approve the minutes from April 9th, 2018, and the CAC only approved the March 5th, 2018 meeting minutes. Work Order 1804K, which is a feasibility study for Banana River and Pine Tree Drive scope, was approved. Work Order 1802A and 1805K, which are miscellaneous activities with our general planning consultant scope. Approval of Resolution 18-20, adopting our fiscal year 19 through 20 Unified Planning Work Program. Approval of Resolution 18-21 for our fiscal year 18 through 22 Transportation Improvement Program amendment. And finally, the Regional Transit Study was presented, and a motion was made by a TAC member to make some revisions to the study. But the motion was not seconded. So the motion failed. CAC motion for the board to consider those same revisions did pass. So when we get to the regional transit study, we'll talk about those revisions and comments in a little bit more detail.
All right, thank you. Any questions? I need a motion to acknowledge the receipt of the TAC-CAC meeting minutes of April 9th. It was motioned by Mr. Osmer and second by Mayor Johnson. Discussion? Seeing none, those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, and I vote aye, and the motion passes. 5B is the Bicycle Pedestrian Trails Advisory Committee report. Sarah Crum.
Good afternoon. Oh, is this on? Good afternoon. I'm Sarah Crum. I'm the Multimodal Program Specialist for the Space Coast TPO. The Bicycle and Pedestrian Trails Advisory Committee met on April 23rd. They will also be meeting this month, May 21st. They received the Space Coast Trail PD&E presentation, the same presentation that you guys received. I believe it was back in February. They also had a presentation from FDOT on Sharrows. They ratified the award nominations that you guys saw today. They have previously formed an ad hoc committee for a community event committee, and they met on April 19th, and they basically came up with 5 tactics to help our BPAC to get out in the community and encourage bicycle pedestrian safety and use throughout Brevard County. So though the tactics will be presented to them at their May 21st meeting for adoption. I also included a Transit One schedule of meetings. If you are unfamiliar with Transit One, it is a transit advocacy group that is formed here in Brevard. And so if you are interested in coming out and supporting the transit system via this group, I just wanted to provide you guys the schedule. All right.
Thank you, Ms. Crum. Any questions for Ms. Crum? All right, thank you very much. Next is item 6, is the consent agenda, and Georgiana?
Yes, I will read the consent agenda, and you can consider adopting these actions by one motion. 6A was approval of TPO board minutes, April 12th, 2018. 6B, approval of committee appointments. 6C, approval of work order 1804K, which is the Banana River Pine Tree Drive feasibility study scope of services. 6D, approval of work orders 1802A and 1805K, miscellaneous activities with our general planning consultants. And then finally, approval of Resolution 18-22, Transportation Disadvantaged Trust Fund Planning Grant.
All right, thank you, Georgiana. Any questions with Georgiana on these? All right, so I need a motion on the consent agenda, A through E.
So moved.
All right, I have a motion by Ms. Lopez
Randall's would second that.
and second by Osmer. Sorry, Randalls. Discussion? Seeing none, those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, and I vote aye, and the motion passes.
Madam Chairman, I have just
Yes.
one question.
Mr. Forster.
Because I'm new to the process, I don't understand, but item 6B, the committee appointments, there are none, so why was it there?
That's a good question. Is it just a standing?
It is a standing item.
Okay.
And sometimes after I put the agenda out, I'll get, I'll get
A last minute.
a last minute that I need to add in there. And so that's when I usually do an add on it. You'll have the sheet set aside. So it's just a standing.
It's a placeholder.
Yeah, it's a
Okay.
All right, very good. Thank you. All right, item 7A is approval of the executive director contract. Mr. Kugelman.
Thank you. The governing board will remember that previously you had decided to go ahead and appoint Ms. Gillette as the new executive director. At that point, authority was delegated to the executive committee to go ahead and negotiate a recommended contract with her, which is presented to you today for your approval. The contract was approved unanimously by the executive committee, and I think the committee members debated a number of the clauses, but I think they felt all of them very unified in making their recommendation. I'd like to point out a couple of the provisions in here just to draw your attention to them. The contract is similar to the contract that the TPO had with Bob Com. However, what we did do is we brought it up to date. We also added some things in it, such as the job description and things of that sort, to make the contract a fuller, stronger contract. The proposed contract that is recommended to you describes a contract term of 5 years, starting April 28th, 2018, until June 30th, 2023 for this position. There was some discussion on that by the executive committee members. The executive committee members felt that it was important to have stability in the position, to get somebody in there that would be career-oriented and supporting the TPO, much as Bob Com was, and therefore the agreed-upon term was until June 30th of 2023. There was a substantial amount of discussion about what to do with regard to the compensation rate. The recommended compensation rate, after some discussion by the board members, was $125,000. And I'll let it, when you get to debate, I'll let any of the members of the board opine to you on what their feelings were on that. The termination clause, I think, is important for you to look at. The executive director, if she decides to terminate the contract for any reason, can do so. She's required, on page 8, to give at least 60 days notice before departing. There are two ways that the TPO can terminate the contract. One is with a majority vote of the full TPO, 10 affirmative votes. You can terminate the contract for any reason or no reason. And in so doing, you then, there's a severance package. The maximum parameters of the severance package are dictated by state law, which is described to you on page 5 of the contract, which is basically 20 weeks of severance pay, which includes certain benefits and excludes others. The other alternative is if there is for cause, and what the meaning of for cause is spelled out in the contract on page 6. For cause, you can always elect to terminate, and there is obviously no severance package. The compensation rate, there were a couple of things that went into that. The executive committee looked at the monthly stipend that is paid to the executive director for a cell phone, which is $40, which is what was paid to Mr. Com. And that's obviously less than probably anybody would be paying for a cell phone. There's no automobile reimbursement, and these are fairly standard benefits. And the executive committee took note of that, and they weighed that as some of the factors in coming up with the dollar amount that they came up in the compensation package. And so there were a number of factors that went into to consider that. Annual leave is 18 days of annual leave. Otherwise, your benefits would be very similar to the benefits that any of the employees of the TPO would be getting. And that's basically the contract package. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you've got. And I think what we're looking for is either a motion to approve as presented or some discussion about how you might want to change it, if that's your prerogative.
All right, thank you.
Motion to approve the contract.
All right, I have a motion to approve the employment contract with Mrs. Georgiana Gillette to fulfill the duties of the SCTPO Executive Director, and that was motioned by Commissioner Snarty, second by Commissioner Pritchett. Discussion? Yeah, Ms. Young.
I noticed under termination for cause, for being here, we have malfeasance, misfeasance, we don't have non-feasance. Only reason I'm asking is that we did have to dismiss someone at one time, and those were very important terms that
What
we wanted to
page,
make sure.
Ms. Young?
It is on page 5,
Okay.
Well, nonfeasance actually is very similar to neglect of duty,
yes?
and neglect of duty is included in there.
So you feel that that's covered with that term?
We feel it's covered, yeah.
All right, thank you.
All right, thank you. Any other discussion? Seeing none, those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, and I vote aye, and the motion passes. Mr. Gugelman, we also need a motion to delegate to the Executive Committee to develop performance criteria and to conduct the annual evaluation.
That's the next thing. And your contract, as was the case with Bob Combs' contract, your contract specifies that when you examine the performance over the previous year, you're going to make a determination as far as whether or not it's appropriate for any sort of pay adjustment, merit increase, or anything, or bonus, or anything of that sort. And to do that, obviously, the executive director needs to know at the beginning of the year term what are some of the things that are high priority as far as the TPO governing board is concerned. And therefore, in the contract, it calls for each year that goals and objectives need to be identified, and so the director will know what her performance, what are the key factors that her performance are going to be measured on over the forthcoming year. And as the chair has noted, we'd like to get a motion to go ahead and delegate to the executive committee authority to go ahead and put those standards together.
All right, thank you, Mr. Gugelman. Any questions for Mr. Gugelman? All right, none. So I need a motion.
I'll move that.
Okay, Mr. Osmer,
Second.
and second by Commissioner Allender. Discussion? Seeing none, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, and I vote aye, and the motion passes. Very good. Congratulations, and we're glad you're on board. Very good. Item 7C, approval of Resolution 18-20, adopting the fiscal year 19 through fiscal year 20, the Unified Planning Work Program, the UPWP. Ms. Carter, welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon. This afternoon, one of the requests we have, one of our required documents we have to present to you for adoption is our biannual Unified Planning Work Program. It's based on our state fiscal year, and it runs from July to June, is for the next 2 fiscal years beginning this July 1st. As you recall, in March, I presented the draft Unified Planning Work Program to you that identified all of the studies and the activities that the TPO staff in this organization will be undertaking over the next couple of years. It included items such as our next long-range transportation plan update. You will be seeing a scope for that in this July meeting. Our bicycle pedestrian master plan. We'll be updating our ITS master plan. All the corridor studies that you see presented to you that the TPO manages, such as Sarner Road, Wickham Road that we presented in December. You will be having Aurora Road presented this July, and additional road corridor studies coming up over the next couple of years. We did open up the draft for 30 days for comments from all of our partnering agencies and the public. We received very minimal comments, which is usually very typical. Those have been addressed in the final document.
And any changes in the future after the document is adopted, we would be presenting to you as an amendment if it changes the scope of our deliverables or any of the grant funds amounts change. Those are amendments. So it runs for 2 fiscal years, fiscal year 19 and fiscal year 20. The fiscal year 19 total budget was a little over $2.4 million, and the fiscal year 20 budget is about $1.9 million. Those totals do include all of the matches that are required with the grants and also includes our Transportation Disadvantaged Local Coordinating Board grant. The deliverables in the UPWP I'd like to mention are also in our strategic plan, which you do get a quarterly report on. So this afternoon, we're asking for approval of Resolution 18-20, the adoption of our fiscal year 19 through 20 UPWP, and this is required a roll call vote today. Thank
All right.
you. I'll answer
Thank
any
you, Ms.
questions.
All right, thank you, Ms. Carter. Any questions for Ms. Carter? All right, so I need a motion. All right.
Second.
I have a motion for approval by Commissioner Isnardi, second by Mr. Osmer, as stated in the board's package. Those, and I need a roll call vote. Almost did it. A roll call vote.
Allender,
Yes.
Barfield,
Yes.
Forrester,
Yes.
Colton,
Yes.
Isnardi. Yes. Johnson,
Yes.
Lopez,
Yes.
Meehan,
Yes.
Nelson. Oh, I'm sorry. And Osmer,
Yes.
Pritchett. Yes. Randalls,
Yes.
Santiago,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Young.
Yes.
Did I miss anyone?
Blanco.
Nelson.
No, Blanco.
Oh, Blanco. Oh, I'm sorry, it's Blanco.
All right.
Okay, and I got everybody?
Yes.
Okay, thank
All right,
you.
very good. All right, 7D is approval of Resolution 18-21 for fiscal year 2018 through 22, Transportation Improvement Plan, better known as the TIP amendment. So, Georgiana?
All right. The DOT has requested a TIP amendment to reduce some construction funding on a project due to a scope and cost estimate change. And that project is on page 100. It is Hopkins Avenue from State Road 50 north to Grace Street. This is one of the complete street projects that the TPO funded several years back. The project has been under design for a couple of years now. But there have been some challenges with the design, specifically concerning utilities and sidewalks. There's been some right-of-way conflict points in relation to the sidewalks. So in an effort to simplify the design and get the design plans approved by the department, the Titusville Public Works Department and the DOT LAP office has been working closely together to reduce the scope so that the construction can be advertised prior to the end of the state fiscal year, which is June 30th of this year. So the timing is really an issue. So on page 101 is the reduction in the cost. So it is taking about $4.5 million off the project. The new scope, it includes milling and resurfacing, reduced travel lanes to add bike lanes, ADA upgrades, transit boarding areas, and signage. So there will be a lot of work on the corridor to really bring it up to current standards. The city is planning to advertise this project by June 22nd of this year. And it's my understanding that the city is planning to bid 2 additional projects once the resurfacing is underway to try and incorporate some of the additional elements, such as landscaping, lighting, sidewalk connections, and things like that. So I think the complete street project will still happen. It's just going to be handled a little differently than originally planned. Now, the money that is coming off this project has got to be put on an existing project that has already been authorized with federal funding. In fact, it's already been moved. $2.4 million was transferred to the Hickory Street Complete Street project. The project, Hickory Street, was another one of our big complete street projects. It's been bid 3 times, and the bids have come in high all 3 times. And so in an effort it was a good fit. It's coming off one complete street project going to another. and the funding came out of the Complete Street box to begin with, so it's fulfilling the purpose of the funding. The remaining funding was transferred to our go-to project, it seems, and that's the Babcock Street widening from Malabar to Palm Bay Road. That's the big widening project on the state road portion. The project is deep in the right-of-way phase right now. The DOT can use up to $10 million this year. There's a lot of willing sellers. They feel kind of stuck because they know a widening project is coming through, and they would really like to get, a lot of them would like to go ahead and sell their homes. So, and this is on the east side of Babcock, the section from Malabar to the canal. So luckily we have two places that could absorb that current year money. It can't be put on a new project. It has to be an existing project that can just keep moving. So we are asking for approval of Resolution 18-21, amending our 18 through 22 TIP. And we do need that via roll call vote as well.
All right, thank you. Any questions? All right, seeing none, I need a motion to approve the resolution. All right, I have a motion by Ms. Young. Second by Commissioner Isnardi, and this is going to require a roll call vote.
Allender?
Yes.
Barfield?
Yes.
Ms. Blanco?
Yes.
Forrester?
Yes.
Holden?
Yes.
Ms. Nardi?
Yes.
Johnson?
Yes.
Lopez?
Yes.
Mina?
Yes.
Osmer?
Yes.
Pritchett? Yes. Randalls?
Yes.
Santiago?
Yes.
Smith?
Yes.
Young? Yes. I got everyone this time?
All right, very good. And it passes. Item 8A, reports and presentations, is the Regional Transit Study. And Sarah Crum is going to be here to introduce the speaker. All right, so it's going to be 5 minutes, right?
5 minutes, yes, the world's fastest presentation.
No. It's a little joke, okay? All right.
So good afternoon again. I'm introducing the Regional Transit Study. It is the implementation of one of the 9 recommendations that came out of the East Central Florida Corridor Task Force, and we've had the opportunity to be involved during the study. And so I'd like to introduce Mark Hargrove, the consultant that conducted the study.
All right.
5 minutes? Is that what you want?
No, did you get the memo?
Is that a challenge? Okay.
Yeah. I think you shorten it, right?
I shortened it because I gave this to the Transportation Tech Committee, and it was 2 hours. But I guarantee you that I'll do the same amount of slides in 10 minutes. How's that?
Okay.
Is that a bet?
All right.
All right, good enough. Good afternoon. I've been lucky enough to work on a really interesting study. It's the first of its kind, really. It's a 10-county, 6 MPO regional transportation study. And as Sarah said, it implements the Central Florida Regional Task Force and the corridors analysis. The benefits of this study are multitude. One is to actually identify cross-jurisdictional transit projects for MPOs can work together and transit agencies can work together to advance these through the federal and state process. It establishes a base condition for 2030. It identifies future transit projects for 2040 and 2060. And also, as a side benefit, the team has worked on other projects throughout the country that have gone through the federal and state process at different states. And so it's going to recommend a strategy of how to advance these projects. The schedule we blew already. We went through and had the report done, in essence, drafted, the plan drafted, and then they asked us to go around to all the MPOs and TPOs and make presentations, and that's what we're doing right now. Project Advisory Group was represented by all the MPOs in 2 districts in central office of DOT. Had several meetings. We've coordinated with all kinds of other studies. I can guarantee you, contrary to popular belief, everything that's in your long-range transportation plan is in our plan, almost verbatim. It was very easy to do this study for 3 MPO TPOs, okay? You were one of them. I won't embarrass the ones who aren't, but Virginia's back here. She was the other one from Metro Plan Orlando. So of the remaining MPO TPOs, you can take your pick as to how easy it was to incorporate it. We coordinate with a lot of studies. There's a lot going on. I know that in Central Florida alone, there's about $20 million worth of studies, not building, but studies. And so we had to coordinate with all those studies. Most notable on this, in addition to your MPO TPO plan, is the intercity bus plan. As we start to advance, and I think Brevard County will understand this because of Brightline coming, and there's lessening federal dollars in transit per se nationwide is starting to depend and help facilitate the private sector. And there's intercity bus services out there right now that really provide valuable services. And while we can't give them money to do their job, we can start doing joint projects with them to facilitate them. So having park and ride, having transit centers to allow Greyhound and Red Bus and Megabus to come in instead of dropping them off in the middle of the interstate or at a gas station or at a rest area. We started this project looking at the existing transit routes. We looked at premium transit, which is obviously Sunrail right now. There's also Limo in Orlando. We looked at everybody's cost feasible networks for all the MPOs and TPOs. We looked at the needs network. Most notable, all the commuter rail and BRT projects that you all have in your TPO plan are in the needs network. So the first thing we did was, okay, we got all these plans, where are the gaps? And so we highlighted where the gaps are. The red items show the gaps. Now, it's one thing to identify physical gaps. The other thing is, are those really gaps? Okay, I mean, you can see, and I'll pick one that isn't relative to you, but look between Mount Dora and Daytona Beach. I mean, anybody's been out there, you can shoot off a cannon and not hit anybody. Okay, it's a gap, but in the future, is that really a feasible transit project? And so we had to figure out what was the demand. So we did a market pattern or travel pattern and market analysis. And what we did was we looked at each MPO TPO and their flows to other MPO TPO areas in terms of person trips. And we did that for every MPO TPO. And then we looked at county to county trips. And so for every county, we looked at person trips back and forth between counties. We did that for Brevard County also. And as you start going along, you see a connection between Polk and Orange, Polk and Osceola, Orange and Brevard. So there starts to become connections. And then we looked at major activity centers. And so we picked the top 10 major activity centers in terms of productions and where they went in terms of the top 20 productions and mapped those out. At the end of the day, the top 10 major activity centers are listed here. There's a little shuffle at the bottom when you go from 2040 to 2060. But the real deal was activity center to activity center, what needs to be connected. And so we started looking at that. And our findings were good news, bad news. There's not a major project out there that's going to help the whole region, 10-county region. That's the bad news. The good news is there's not a major project that will suck up all the money for a 10-county region, and that there's a robust transit network already out there planned by the MPOs and the TPOs. And our job was to show how they connect and recommend how they connect. So what we did was first decided on a big framework. And the big framework is finish Sunrail within Central Florida, both the DeLand and Polk TPO has plans to go between Point Siena Station in Osceola County and Lakeland. Okay? My first job in 1983 in Central Florida was the high-speed rail between Orlando and Tampa. Guess what? That demand doesn't go away, so it's really a no-brainer that it's time to extend Sunrail eventually, by 2060, to Lakeland. The other was, again, just like with the private buses, the bus system, is piggyback in on Brightline. Okay? I know you have commuter rail running along US 1 on the FEC, and you have 2 rail connections in your plan. One new one going through the ranch and into OIA, and the other one along 528 and going to OIA. Okay? I did the first feasibility study for Sunrail in 1989. Okay? So 30 years hence, we have one commuter rail in Central Florida, okay, in the 10 counties. So if you think we're going to have 2 more serving Brevard County in the future, okay, let's keep it in the plan, but then let's start figuring out how we can implement it, piggybacking on the private sector. And I don't say this in jest because I'm working on a project in the FEC corridor, same corridor, Tri-Rail Coastal Link. Okay, so, Tri-Rail wanted to implement commuter rail on the FEC line. Brightline came along and said, hey, it doesn't make sense for you guys to run a government-sponsored project in this corridor. Why don't we work with you to establish interim stations? We'll run the service, you pay us, and you build the stations, and then we'll have commuter rail in between our intercity trains, okay? We're working on that deal right now. We're trying to figure out fees, track access, liability, everything you have to go through. But instead of replicating what they're putting out there, we're going to try and piggyback in. The same thing could be done with your commuter rail on the FEC corridor in Brevard County. The same thing could be done with a connection between Brevard County and OIA along 528. So that was the backbone. The private bus system was also the backbone, and then each of the MPO, TPO elements. No great surprise. We have all your plan that's in here. There's a map and there's verbiage, but everything you have in your 2040 plan, we have in the plan. And then in the future corridors, because of the limitations of the study, we could not pick corridors between here and Brevard County regarding the ranch and the northeast sector for Osceola County. That's a future study that needs to be done as it starts growing. But what we have in here is obviously the Clear Lake preferred location for intercity rail, a midpoint location along the ranch, and then into OIA. We have all your BRT. We have commuter rail in there. We have a BRT along 192. We have the Pineda extension through the ranch. So all that is in here. Our next steps are to present to all the MPO TPOs. We have 2 more MPOs to go through, produce a final draft for our project advisory committee, and then present to the MPO Alliance, who is managing this project. Going back to what the executive director said earlier, the CAC and had a motion, and every one of those things are either in the plan or easily adapted. There's verbiage. Sometimes there's a disconnect between the map and the verbiage, and just like a comprehensive plan, the verbiage outweighs the map. So it basically says can be any type of transit technology between the port and US 1. So there's things like that were in the CAC motion. The only thing in the CAC motion that I can't do is they asked to add Brightline to the needs network. I don't have that power. Y'all do. So that was the only thing in the CAC recommendation that I can't do. They asked to add Brightline to the needs network, and you can do it. I can't. And I have no opinion one way or the other on that. So that being said, I got through it in almost 10 minutes. That's not bad. Do y'all have any questions?
All right, any questions?
But the other items that the CAC made in their motion, you can add to the plan.
Yes, sir. And we'll be done.
Who has the authority to have the commuter rail connections from OIA to the port, and also from Melbourne International to OIA?
Those are actually in the plan.
But they're not on any map.
They're not on the map. There's corridors on the map that are listed, and the verbiage actually says that the Brightline and BRT to preserve the corridor, and then if demand is shown, commuter rail.
But isn't the two really inconsistent? I know the verbiage handles, but is it misleading? And if you look at a map and you don't see anything like that on a map?
I can put it on there. I can put it on there. I don't recommend it, but this is a consensus plan, and so if you want it, I can do it.
Well, I just want it known that the Canaveral Port Authority is not going forward on any rail projects where we had no input in any rail commuter connections on any of this. Obviously, it was done without any input from the Canaveral Port Authority or any representatives of the Canaveral Port Authority.
There's been some confusion about what this is, and what this is a framework. This isn't a implementation plan per se, and this isn't a DOT-driven TIP 5-year work program. 2060. I mean, I hope, but I'm not going to be here in 2060. It's kind of trying to get a bunch of projects linked up to show the federal government and to show the locals and to show the transit agencies and the MPOs that we actually do have a 10-county regional network. And so we're trying to show that and depict that. And that way, when individual projects come up, we can come in, join hands with the adjacent transit agency or MPO and say, we want to advance this together. It's on our plan.
But unfortunately, many people that would read this plan, if anybody ever bothered to read it, or at least report it, would, even set for 2040, would be, many people in Merritt Island would be somewhat upset with a consideration of a rail down 528. I mean, I don't know what you do about that, but I know it is very, very, very misleading as far as the people that are going to obviously be opposed to any kind of commuter rail down 528,
Right.
no matter where it goes.
Right.
Okay.
I think the other thing we found, and I don't want to eat into any more of my, your time.
You're fine.
But I think the other thing we found, and I started this by saying the good news is, or the bad news is there's no silver bullet. The good news is there's no silver bullet. One of the things we found, everybody came into this project thinking there was actually going to be major projects, 10-county major projects. And what we found is two things. One is the MPOs have done such a good job of balancing their productions and attractions internally. So you don't have a lot of long-distance trips anymore. I mean, with the exception of special generators like the port. You don't see a lot of those. The other thing is land development is starting to occur, and people are, for their optional trips aren't taking transit anymore. They're taking Uber, Lyft, car share, ride share. And so that starts to become reflected in some of these numbers. So the way I did things 38 years ago when I started doing this and recommending commuter rail, light rail, heavy rail, I tell my kids don't get into my profession because it's not going to be here 10 years from now. The number of commuter rail systems you'll see pop up in this country in the next 10 years are zero. Right, exactly. And so it's going to be things like partnering with private sector, partnering with autonomous bus vehicles that are operated by the private sector. It's going to be partnering with people who have the financial wherewithal to get bonds to run bright line. I mean, that's the type of thing I think the future is going to hold for all of us.
And I just wanted to mention, so this is a very high-level study.
Very high.
Like up here. And now that we are beginning the development of our new 2045 long-range plan, we're like here. So this is going to be a really good tool that's going to feed into that development. And I think it's given us a lot of really good information. A lot of these things cannot be accomplished, but at least we know where we stand. So
Yep.
it's a good study.
Thank you.
All right. Any
Thanks
other
for your
questions? All right. Well, thank you so much.
Appreciate it.
I was thinking we're going to be here 2
No,
hours,
no.
and
You tell me
okay.
which version you want and you get it.
Thank you, because we can always contact you, right?
Oh, yes.
Any questions?
Sarah knows where I'm at, and,
Yeah.
just
Okay.
let me know if you have any questions. There's information in your package that's kind of interesting for trip productions and attractions, so take a look at it.
Okay, thank you. 8B, staff report, Georgiana?
All right, yes. Let's see here. Included in your attachments, beginning on page 140, is just the DOT MPO Joint Certification Report. We have that certification every January between the DOT and the MPO. And the district must certify the TPO's transportation planning process. On page 161 is a list of our noteworthy achievements. In the interest of time, I'm not going to read them. If you'd like to look through the report, it is there for you. Every 4 years, we have to be certified by Federal Highway and FTA. And so we are coming up on our 4 years, and that is scheduled for June 12th of this year. So we've already got that room scheduled, and that'll be an all-day event with Federal Highway. Also in your attachments is the Strategic Plan Quarterly Report from January to March, if you'd like to dig into it and see what the TPO's been up to over the last 3 months. And just a reminder, we do not meet in June. And also at your place, you have a new updated 2018 meeting calendar. Due to this being an election year, we have to find another room.
We're getting kicked out.
So Lisa has worked very hard to come up with some additional rooms. We will be in the Space Coast room upstairs for the July and September meetings. October and November, we'll be over at the Posey Room at the Health Department. And in December, we'll be back here in the Florida Room. The meeting time has also changed to 1:30 to 3. And so we wanted to make sure that you are aware of that. Hopefully that doesn't cause any problems or issues with everyone. Some people may like it, and we're not meeting at 3 o'clock in
Well,
in the
I
afternoon.
kind of like the 8:30 meeting, but, okay. I'm sorry, I'm sorry. I didn't want to say anything, but, all right.
So anyway, we will send out reminders. There's no way we expect you to keep up with this. So prior to, since we're going to be all over the place, we'll make sure you know where we're meeting and what time.
Yeah. Did you have anything, Commissioner Allender?
Not going to take any action on the recommendation from the CAC? Which you said
Well-
we would discuss later, or is
Well-
that planned for next month when their actual minutes
Yes.
are presented?
Basically, what Mark was saying is that all of them can be incorporated and will be addressed. But adding the bright line to the needs plan, that really cannot be done because in our needs plan, we do not have bright line included. But we will be, it's a completely private rail. And so that's not something that was included in the development of our current long-range plan. Now, Laura, do we have like a discussion of Brightline in the narrative of our long-range plan? So we address it in that way, but because it's private, we have not, there's no funding attached to it that we have to be responsible for.
But does that mean that we can't make that recommendation, even though they can't fulfill it? But, I mean,
Do you want
I mean, and I don't know, maybe this is not the appropriate time. CAC made a motion that we consider these additions. Do we just ignore that? Do we, would that be appropriate at this meeting or at next meeting when we consider their agenda?
No, I definitely think it would be appropriate for us to decide at this meeting.
So Mark is going to be incorporating all 3 of those edits. The TPO does not have to make a motion to, make that suggestion to him. He's just going to go ahead and take what our CAC recommended and the issues that were brought up at our committee meeting and incorporate all those with the exception of the bright line into the needs network. If the bright line had been in our LRTP, then it would have been reflected in the needs network. It's basically they did not create any of those lines during their process. That was literally just they went into the various MPO TPOs needs networks and mapped what that was there. So that's why they do not want to add that to the line because it doesn't reflect what our plan says.
But are the other 3 items will
they will be
be
addressed.
Yes.
put into their
And
when it's presented?
there's even a second opportunity for our TPO members to make sure that they were incorporated is when in July when they present to the Central Florida MPO Alliance, Mayor Meehan, Commissioner Randalls, and Holton will also have an opportunity to once again review what they're presenting and make those recommendations. So I think it's really prudent that you guys saw the information and now you guys can remember that for July and follow up if that's what our board would like.
So I think we've done all that we can. We've incorporated all the edits that we can possibly do at this time. Unless we want to amend our long-range plan, which I don't.
I think we have the opportunity to consider that during the long-range plan update, but I don't think it's necessary
Yeah,
now.
we have a scope for the new long-range plan, and I think it would be a lot more appropriate to make sure that it's incorporated, yes. And that's in the process right now.
And we won't forget that.
We will not. That's, Brightline that's the big one.
That's the big one.
Does everyone feel more comfortable now with it?
Yes.
All right, thank you.
All right.
Not really, but
Okay, 8C, Public Engagement Report, and that will be Abby.
Madam Chair, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Thank you. So today I'll be briefly recapping our engagement and our outreach efforts for the month of March. So to just start off, for school-based public involvement, we had 7 schools participate in the Florida in Traffic and Bicycle Safety Education Program in March. Through that program, we had 285 helmets that were donated so to students in need. So that was a great outreach effort on behalf of Kim Smith. She runs that entire program. And then for community-based involvement, before I go to that next slide, I did just want to pause for a second and just make the board aware that when we go to community events, it's not only getting out there face-to-face with citizens, but we normally provide them with informational materials in the forms of brochures, handouts. Normally it's through our partners such as FDOT or Alert Today, Live Tomorrow. So just to kind of give you a gauge for the month of that, we distributed over 500 resources. Brochures at our events, and then we partnered with our local agencies, police departments, to provide click it or ticket banners, which is kicking off in the month of May. Oh, just to go back actually real quick, we also during the month of March, we promoted Bike to School Day, which happened this past Wednesday. We had 24 schools out of 55 elementary schools participate, which is amazing. To give you an overview, only 90 schools participated in Florida. So to have a big chunk of that only in Brevard is a really, really great effort. We're lucky that the TPO has a really good partnership with Brevard Public Schools. They pushed it out. We had staff that were at multiple locations that day. Some of our partners who were actually recognized today for their awards, they partnered with us and promoted that in their own municipalities. So it was just a great event, and we have photos of that on our social media outlets if you're interested. So for our community-based public involvement, we had lots of different events that we did for the month of March, but a few that I'll just highlight. One, we did a safety presentation at Faith Fellowship Academy, and this is typical. We do a lot of presentations at schools and for daycare facilities, but this one I wanted to highlight because it's a faith-based partnership, and we want to make sure that we're getting out there and touching base with our faith-based organizations. They play a huge part in our community, so we're going to continue to do that this year in other fashions and forms. We also held our Aurora Road Preferred Alternatives meeting. This was a really neat public meeting. It was a little different. Our consultants brought virtual reality glasses that attendees could put on and actually see road improvements by looking around. Mary Meehan experienced this firsthand.
It was really cool.
It was really cool.
It was.
You know, as technology advances, it's really neat to start incorporating these into public meetings to make them more hands-on, to make them more interesting, to kind of gauge interest from the younger generation into transportation planning. So it was a really great event. And then the last one I'll just mention that we got a lot of good feedback from as we attended the Boomer Guide Senior Expo, which is held every year here in Viera. And we saw over 300 senior citizens that day. It's a really key demographic for Brevard, so it was great to get out there and share some public safety information with them. To move on to our digital media analytics for the month of March, our social media analytics were pretty much on trend. This is going to change in April, so I'm excited to kind of talk to you about that at our next scheduled meeting. About the differences with our analytics, because we had a public workshop with Sarnar Road Corridor Study, and we ended up boosting social media, and so I'm excited to report back on that later in a few months. But one thing that I wanted to point out was that we saw an increase in our website sessions, and this one graphic that I included here that we actually created, just so that you're aware of the information that we're putting out there and how it's spreading to a lot of different citizens. This one graphic about spring break safety was shared 42 times and it reached over 8,600 people. Wow. So that's a good chunk when you when you can't boost anything or you don't really have funds for social media. You're just relying on your partners. So I just can't talk more enough about our partners and how we're very grateful for collaboration and making sure we get our messages out there. And then for our news media features for the month of March, the ones that I want to call out are really, we had 2 great PR opportunities for Hickory Street, our new complete street kickoff in the city of Melbourne. This was huge. You know, most of the time citizens don't know about a complete street until afterwards. There's not a lot of proactive education going out. So City of Melbourne and the TPO, we partnered on crafting some positive, proactive messages, getting the press involved and excited about Hickory Street and highlighting the positive aspects and how it's going to change the community. So it was just a really, really great PR opportunity for us. Throughout that process, we're going to be educating the local community, the hospital employees. So it's going to be a great project. And you can see some of the other features that we had there as well for the month of March. And that's it.
All right, thank you very much. Any questions? All right, very good.
Thank you.
Keep up the good work. 8D, local government report. Georgiana?
I have nothing.
All right, thank you very much. 8E is the multimodal agencies report. Stephen Bastille?
All of our modal agencies are very busy at work, and kind of Melbourne Airport's moving along on the runway resurfacing. You guys had a great 5K. It was very successful in the lighting ceremony.
Yeah.
And Port Canaveral's working on a lot of different things. They're Cruise Terminal 3.
Oh.
And they're also working closely with the Indian River Lagoon Council on a flushing study of the Banana River. Once those results are finalized, they're going to share those with us, and we'll have those presented here as well, most likely. And that's really pretty much it. And we should have a launch going off pretty soon here. It got pushed, got delayed a little bit, so maybe we can see it on our way home.
Okay. My husband asked, am I going to stop the meeting so we can watch it? And I said, no, I don't think so.
I was trying to time it for when I came up here. I could pull it up, but...
Oh, cool. All right. Thank you, Steve.
Yep.
8F is the regional coordination report.
There is an MPOAC meeting June the 7th, and that's at the Hyatt Place, Orlando, Lake Buena Vista, 3 p.m.
Right, we'll be there. All right, 8G, the Florida Department of Transportation report. Janet Taylor, welcome.
Thank you. I'm Janet Taylor, your Florida Department of Transportation liaison. Just a couple of things in your packet this month. There is the monthly construction report is attached, and there's also an attachment for the high visibility enforcement for pedestrian and bicycle safety handout. And then I also wanted to mention we have our quarterly meeting, our partnering meeting that we haven't had it in quite some time, but we're going to have it this Monday, the 14th at 1:30. We're going to try something new this time. We're going to have the location set up in DeLand. For those that would like to travel to DeLand are welcome to come to DeLand. But if you would like, we're also going to be set up at the Brevard Operations Facility. We have a new facility there on Camp Road. We're going to try to do a video teleconference. So that might be more convenient for some people that can't make the trip to DeLand. So we're going to try that out this time. So that's at 1:30 on Monday.
Okay. All right. Any questions for Ms. Taylor? All right, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Okay, next is, do I have any sign-up sheets? Anybody that want to make a comment? No? All right, seeing none. Okay, next meeting is going to be, we have no meeting in June, so it will be in July. So is there any other comments or concerns? Seeing none, I'll go ahead and adjourn the meeting at 4:17.
The opinions expressed by any member of the public during any period of public comment do not necessarily reflect the views or opinions of the Board of County Commissioners of Brevard County, Florida, Space Coast Government Television, or the program sponsor, and are solely those of the presenter. The Board of County Commissioners of Brevard County, Florida, Space Coast Government Television, and the program sponsor hereby expressly disclaim any and all responsibility or liability for any defamatory or slanderous statements expressed by any member of the public during any such period.